Unless you're blessed to live by like a hydro kind of a geographical region that is good for geothermal or for hydro, nuclear is going to be your base load. You look at almost every chart; it's like that. That's reliable. Absolutely. It's there. It's across the board. We're solid.
Absolutely, and you've got technologies that are capable of being that reliable that are not utilized that way. For example, natural gas. The capacity factor for natural gas is quite a bit lower than I think most people would anticipate. That's not because of there are a few unplanned breakdowns with natural gas fired turbines and that sort of thing, but it's actually much, much lower because the natural gas is intended to be used as a peaking device. In essence, it turns on, produces a whole pile of electricity, and then shuts down when the demand drops below a certain level. Nuclear plants don't operate that way. Nuclear plants can't be ramped up and down, at whim. So they tend to be operated flat out all the time, which is frankly a good utilization of a fairly hefty investment.
I believe there's 4 different provinces have at least talks underway or open up about SMRs here in Canada, which is a big step.
Yes. Sadly, though, what we've seen on the other side of the border in the US is a number of SMR projects that have been defunded.
Yes.
Essentially taken off the table. And it's largely because the initial promise of SMRs that they were going to be, cheap and easy and simple and all of the rest of it is not bearing out. I mean, they are turning out to be complicated, expensive and the like. And that coupled with this idea that you're front end loading uranium demand when you're building SMRs, and that we don't have a lot of uranium to spare, those are not welcome developments. I mean, we're probably better off sticking with large systems to replace coal-fired plants.
Okay.
And, and to act as central generating stations, because there we can monitor the safety of the system. We can do a better job of monitoring construction and making sure that no corners are cut. And frankly, they're just more efficient at the end of the day. So, I'd love to walk in and say, we've got a brand new technology. It's boy, oh boy, this is it. It's going to take over, and with nuclear fusion by next Thursday or something like that. We're not going to achieve massive breakthroughs in these technologies anytime soon. We need to do something now. And hey, if we do get nuclear fusion next year and a big surprise, great. But at least we'll be alleviating some of the issues as soon as possible by going down the road and building more conventional nuclear.
Yes, and I mean not picking on NuScale, but I mean they ran into the problems there. They were like an MIT top 15 company, kind of almost the only game in town to some extent. So everyone goes, okay, let's just pile on board with it and let's make it happen. And I guess timing too. They run it after COVID. You've got high inflation costs from everything, and a high fuel source cost that you probably didn't anticipate. You go,
And Andrew, I think one thing that companies really didn't anticipate in the conversations that I've had with some of them is the idea that you are constrained in your fuel availability. And so if I'm a major power company in the United States and I walk into Cameco's offices and I say, listen, we'd like to renew the same contract we've had with you for 15 years. We want to buy this much uranium. Cameco is going to go, you bet. You are a solid customer. Your credentials in terms of as a counterparty are impeccable. You pay on time. You have all the ability to borrow money in the world. You're demanding a certain amount of uranium every 4 months. We're in great shape. You bet. Contract signed. If I walk in as a NuScale and I say, listen, we'd like to buy some uranium, and Cameco says, it's terrific. What are you looking for? Well, we're not really sure. We're not sure how many reactors we're going to sell. It's going to be somewhere between 20 units and 2,000 units. So it's going to be between this and this that we want. You don't mind that, do you? And Cameco is going to look at you and say, get out. I mean, I can allocate you this much if you're absolutely willing to do a take or pay. On that much. But all this demand, as and when, baby, and you're going to pay spot, because I have no idea if you're good for the payments. I have no idea if you're going to get the orders. And that means as a builder of these things, how do you forecast what your business is going to look like?
Yeah. And I was going to kind of say, as we move into a discussion about lithium, is and it's got to be tough for you as well when you're talking about a price whenever you know this kind of market, not only do you not want to put it a price because the volatility is so high and the demand curves, like it could be so steep, but no one wants to go out and say, hey, listen, this is what we're facing. So it's very, very challenging, especially on the uranium front, to go with all those factors.
I mean, uranium has that issue, but uranium is it's a fairly easily planned situation in the sense that no one is suddenly going to whip a curtain aside and say, haha, I built 5 nuclear reactors while no one was looking. I mean, that that's not happening anywhere in the world. So we understand there's a lengthy planning process. We can deal with the demand that's going to come in. We know exactly how much uranium is required on day one. We know what the refuel requirements are. All of that is available for your planning. With something like lithium, where you're starting from a small base again, and you're really looking at the whims of particular companies and particular buyers in a given year, all bets are off in terms of what can happen. And what we're seeing right now in the lithium space is exactly the kind of whipsaw that you expect to see in a critical materials market. So, I mean, Andrew, we've had these discussions before. Anybody who's listened to me speak, they understand I am not the biggest proponent of battery electric vehicles.
Yeah.
I look at them as a marketer, and I basically say, I'm glad I don't have to try to sell this to anybody, because what I'm trying to do is, the mantra in marketing has always been, you can have better, you can have faster, you can have cheaper, pick two.
Yes.
Because you can't have all three.
Yes.
Okay, so which two do you want in your next generation product? What would you be willing to pay for? And then that's marketing, essentially. With a battery electric vehicle, you're essentially arguably getting one of those three, not two, and you're giving things up along the way. So, everybody is starting to understand a battery electric vehicle without a place to charge it rapidly is a pain.
Yes.
It's difficult to see why somebody would want to pay significantly more for a product that gives them less. Now, there's always going to be a few pioneers that run out and say, oh boy, I'm doing wonderful things for the world. My concept on that is the IPCC's numbers. The International Panel on Climate Change says that only about 12% of global emissions come from transportation, from road transportation generally.
Yeah.
Even if you grant that everyone is going to drive a battery electric vehicle someday, and all of that electricity is going to be generated by non-carbon sources, we're probably only talking about 7 or 8% of global emissions. That's going to take us decades to do.
Yeah.
And why are we, pinning all of our hopes on this thing? Because there is no chance it is going to save us. I mean, every little bit helps, granted.
Sure. Yeah.
But where could we use the lithium we have and get the biggest bang for our climate buck? And the answer there is, rather than everybody running out and buying a Tesla, how about everybody run out and buy a hybrid vehicle or a plug-in hybrid, as Toyota is suggesting by next year, making the Camry, the base model Camry, a hybrid.
Yes.
There will be, as of next year in the United States, there will be no Toyota Camry with an internal combustion engine alone as an offering. They will all be hybrids or plug-in hybrids. So that's an indication not only that the technology is there, but Toyota actually believes that they can build those hybrids less expensively than an internal combustion alone variant.
It's fun. It's pretty wild. We talked about it before, is that seems like the most reasonable approach if you're going to be talking about cars, because you get the public comfortable and they don't feel like I have to choose one or the other. Like, oh, I'm trapped in this car here, which I can never work on, but most people are very comfortable with a hybrid, and you're going to get significant savings in emissions from a hybrid. And then we can focus on those, like you said, those big industrial numbers that aren't glamorous to anyone, except for people who are really, really paying attention, that you're not going to get the political clout maybe for, but it's like, we're actually taking a chunk out of that there.
And Andrew, that argument is, there are places for battery electric vehicles. For example, Amazon delivery vans and delivery trucks. They've got a computer system that says this vehicle is going to drive from here to here to here to here to here to here to here, and then it's going to come back to the depot. They know exactly how far that vehicle is going to travel to within a very tight range. Super. So you add another constraint that says, by the way, this vehicle can't drive on the battery that it's got further than 350 kilometers in a day.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. But the guy's driving, through a city at, the delivery driver is taking this thing through a city at 50, 60 kilometers an hour. They're stopping for probably about half their time.
Yes.
Their average speed through the day is probably only around 25 kilometers an hour. If it's an 8-hour day, they're not traveling more than about 200 kilometers, period. So, that vehicle, putting a battery in it that's sized to that need, yes, you could absolutely do that, providing you've got the recharge capacity back at the depot. You absolutely could do that and turn that into a battery electric vehicle, and that's a good thing. But when I hear somebody like the fallen saint Elon Musk talking about semi-trailer trucks on the highway,
yeah,
like, are you serious, man? I mean, it's not hard to figure out from an average energy consumption and the distance that a trucker drives on a highway in a day to figure out that you're going to spend a good chunk of every day attached to some kind of charging device.
Yes, the amount of battery, I can't imagine how big that battery would be. Like hauling heavy load. Like
you're talking about hundreds of kilowatt hours worth of battery. And when you're talking about hundreds of kilowatt hours of battery, you are not recharging that in 10 minutes. I mean, unless you have your own nuclear plant available to do it,
yes,
you are not able to provide the power to recharge that battery in any reasonable time, much less the fact that the battery will probably catch fire. So you are automatically saying, if two drivers are traveling as a pair and one is sleeping in the back of the cab while the other is driving, you are automatically saying you're not doing that anymore. You're not able to cover that kind of distance in a day with a pair of drivers. You're stuck with stopping and probably recharging for 8 or 10 hours at a time.
Now I'll put my rose-colored glasses on and go, now, wouldn't it be nice if you saw a plan where you say, yeah, we're rolling out 8 nuclear power plants a year, and we're going to have charging stations all across the U.S. You go, oh, okay, well, hold on now. But now you have a solution, but
but now you have to get the agreement to pull that nice thick electrical cable into some remote location in the middle of
Idaho,
the desert somewhere,
or the desert,
and provide a charging point for vehicles that are coming out of Los Angeles, let's say, or going into Los Angeles, and it's it becomes an extremely complex problem. I mean, if China can't get their act together with respect to new energy vehicles and electricity demand on the grid, and they're a planned economy, I fail to understand how our completely unplanned and random economy is going to manage to accommodate this. It just isn't going to happen.
No, and that's the disappointing factor is when you think, oh, if we all just came together, it's so utopian. And you see just trying to get something small done state by state by state and province by province here as well. It becomes enormously difficult to think, how is this all going to come together?
Well, I've had presentations, Andrew, where I've presented in front of Americans, and I say, the United States has done the most of any nation in combating climate change. And everybody sort of goes, oh. And then I explain, you basically had a wholesale transition away from burning coal towards burning natural gas.